Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. Janelle is off. Landowners making dough off the bucks on their property. During Montana's hunting season, hundreds of thousands of dollars come in as hunters set out in the backcountry to find their seasonal trophy. But where does all that money go? MTN Investigates is learning the state of Montana doles out millions of dollars every year to just a select group of people for the hunting season. MTN Chief Investigative Reporter Andrea Lutz is tracking the money.
We often find ourselves asking how the government spends our money. There's roughly $6 million that the state of Montana pays out every single year to some roughly 1,200 landowners. And we're learning you too could have a piece of that money just if you own the right piece of property.
As these hunters
It was a good day.
marvel at their prize near Helena.
So I left the house this morning in the dark with a headlamp, and I told the wife, I'm gonna go see if I can get one of those bulls we saw last night. They were there first thing this morning.
Over near Toston,
796.
rancher Tom Williams counts just how many hunters have been at his property this year.
I have about 6,000 acres.
6,000 acres of ranch land that have been in his family for decades.
We allow everybody in. We don't guide anybody. They ask where the elk are, and we say, well, there's some up here.
He allows them in as a part of block management, a program that brings hunters and landowners together for one season only.
It's a model that works for Montana and seems to be flexible enough to work for landowners.
Back in the mid-1980s, the legislature approved a program to open up land to hunters, and each year the payout seems to get larger, while the acreage of participants seems to decrease. Landowners place a check-in box and some signs on their property, even making their own rules.
Because you might only have a few acres, but you're allowing public access through your property to get to a huge chunk of public ground.
And that right there is just one reason why landowners like Williams signed up.
Well, we get a pretty good check from our block management.
Another reason is the payout.
We put it back into the ranch. There's quite a few hundred days. It adds up to thousands.
Depending on if your place is popular for hunters, a landowner could receive as much as $15,000 a year from the state of Montana.
Some of them are receiving $30,000, $50,000, and one is $70,000 worth of hunter days. It's just kind of by their good graces almost that they're still allowing public access. So I guess I would say $15,000 is fair, but it's probably not enough.
But where is the money to pay for all of this coming from?
So mostly it's all hunters paying for it.
Jason Kuhl with Fish, Wildlife and Park says through the cost to get a license. There are roughly 900 block management areas across Montana, with those in southeastern Montana making the most money.
Without this access, nobody'd be up here.
So depending on where hunters like to go,
People respect the opportunity.
anyone really could be making thousands of dollars off the state of Montana just for some friendly stewardship of their very own land.
But the hunters have a place to go. I've had some hunters say they won't go on block management. They aren't going to go ask permission. That's too bad. All they have to do is ask and they can go.
Andrea Lutz, MTN Investigates.
And we do want to mention, while most of the $6 million paid to landowners comes from the price to pay for a license, some is federal dollars. And here's how that works. Montana participants in the Pittman-Robertson's Fund, which is taxed from the cost to buy firearms, ammunition, bows, and arrows. Roughly 1.3 of that is federal aid. Andrea has a complete background of that money on our website. Just go to the story. It's on the MTN Investigates tab. Well, Colstrip's coal plant operators in hot water with the Montana DEQ to the tune of $450,000. Talent Energy dinged for hazardous emissions it spewed from the plant during the summer of 2018. Testing showed plants 3 and 4 failed tests for hazardous air pollutants such as lead, cadmium, and chromium. As part of the fine, Talent must also pay to help communities affected by these emissions. That includes $270,000 to the Northern Cheyenne tribe and $100,000 to the city of Colstrip. And for more on the requirements of Talent's fine, you can head to this story on KTVQ.com. Well, President Trump signed an executive order today establishing a nationwide missing murdered Indigenous persons task force. Attorney General William Barr announced the president's intentions to do so while visiting Montana last week. The initiative would invest $1.5 million to hire specialized coordinators in 11 U.S. attorneys' offices across the U.S. The coordinators would be responsible for developing protocols for law enforcement response to missing persons cases.
One study showed that Native American women in certain tribal communities are 10 times more likely to be murdered than the average American. The victims and their families deserve action, and this should have happened many years ago.
Now, President Trump was joined in the Oval Office by several Native American tribal leaders, including Crow Tribal Chairman Elvin Not Afraid Jr. That's him on the right next to the president, who thanked the president for his support. Well, 2 of the 3 Republicans running for Montana governor squared off tonight in a public debate in Helena. And even though one candidate wasn't there, his presence was still felt. MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison has the story.
The 2-person debate at Carroll College featured Attorney General Tim Fox and State Senator Al Olszewski of Kalispell. Republican Congressman Greg Gianforte said he couldn't be there because of a prior family commitment. But that didn't stop Fox from getting in a dig at Gianforte right off the bat, including a reference to a fundraiser Gianforte held Sunday in Helena with Donald Trump Jr.
I'm disappointed, like you are, that Greg Gianforte decided not to cooperate in those negotiations, and so he's not here today. But all is not lost. Just this week, you could have paid $1,000 for a special time with Greg here in Helena.
The 2 candidates fielded questions about jobs and the economy from a panel of Carroll faculty and 1 student. When it came to education and worker shortages, both said Montana must place more focus on vocational education.
I think that we should start early in our education system to let our students know that not everyone needs a 4-year college degree to be happy, to be successful, or to have financial success.
And Olszewski pointed to programs that he supported in the legislature and would expand to help push more students toward needed jobs in rural areas.
We're going to continue to work on student loan forgiveness and debt relief for those people who go into healthcare, go into education, and into STEM fields, and then go to rural and frontier Montana.
Olszewski also said he'd be a promoter of rural Montana, which he said can offer good jobs, and he gave a full-throated endorsement of coal development.
Whether you like it or not, our world lives on coal. And if we're going to have Asia Pacific Rim running on coal, we need to make sure it's Montana coal. It's good for Montana and it's good for our climate.
Yet, when it came down to details and policy, the 2 candidates mostly agreed. The only real sparks came when Fox sought to point out differences between himself and Mr. Gianforte. So even though we didn't have all 3 candidates here Tuesday, we still got a good preview of what will certainly be a hard-fought race. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
And all 3 Republicans are scheduled to be at a debate in Billings in January. 4 Democrats are also in the race for Montana governor. Well, a Facebook post made on the Laurel Emergency Medical Services page last night caused some concern for residents in the community. Laurel Volunteer Ambulance Director Riley Hutchins made the post criticizing the mayor's decision to not hire on 5 full-time EMTs and announced his resignation. Laurel Mayor Tom Nelson says he only placed the decision on hold, and the city will now hire 5 full-time EMTs. Q2's Mitch Legge joins us now with more from the Laurel Mayor. Mitch?
Well, Russ, Laurel Mayor Tom Nelson told me today that the city needs more ambulance personnel to respond to the growing number of calls in the community. Nelson said that 5 new EMTs will work alongside the current volunteer ambulance service, helping pick up calls during the nighttime and early morning hours, the kind of calls that would take the volunteers longer to get to. Laurel Ambulance Director Riley Hutchins updated his post today, saying that the new EMTs will start work in January 2020. Last night, Hutchins announced his resignation as Ambulance Service Director, saying, quote, "I can no longer serve as the EMS Director under this administration." Those new EMTs will be paid for by the city under a contract with American Medical Response, the same ambulance service that operates here in Billings.
I just put that on hold yesterday because I wanted to get some more answers to questions that I hadn't gotten answered yet in regards to some of the plans for that. And, we've identified that need to utilize full-time employees, especially and that again is to support and back up the volunteers and utilize them, especially those times of day when it's just really difficult to get the volunteers over to the station.
And the mayor added that Laurel has no social media policy governing the content that its departments can post. We reached out to Hutchins for comment, but have not heard back at this time. Russ?
All right, thank you, Mitch. Let's turn to weather now. Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire joining us. And Bob, a lot of people are going to be hitting the roads this week. We could run into some snow.
I'm kind of worried about this because the threat board is already starting to fill up. Let me show you what we have. We start off out in western Montana. You'll be traveling there. You'll be running into some strong gusty winds, 45 to 50 mile per hour winds, and that takes you through Wednesday afternoon. Then on the pink area, that's where we start at midnight tonight, go to 11 p.m. on Thursday, and that we're looking at 6 to 12 inches of snow in the valleys right along Interstate 15. And then up against the Rocky Mountain front, could see in some cases up to 28 inches of snow piling up there, just the way the snow is going upslope. That's going to be the issue. Meanwhile, over there in the purple area, that's where we have winter weather advisories. Right there next to Idaho, we're looking at maybe 4 to 8 inches of snow there, 1 to 3 inches of snow elsewhere. And then all the way up to about, get up to about the high line, we're looking at maybe 2 to 5 inches of snow there. Then in eastern Montana, we have two winter storm watches. The first one, that's the one up there in the north, goes to 6 to 11 inches of snow. And then in south central and southeastern Montana, could see 5 to 13 inches of snow as this whole system starts moving through. It's going to be one little bit at a time. First out in the west, then tomorrow probably into the central part of the state, then by Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, then it'll be our turn. Back to you, Russ.
All right, thank you, Bob. Well, it might be November, but another fire is raging in California, this time in Santa Barbara. A late-season wildfire exploded overnight and has already scorched thousands of acres. Wind gusts of 55 miles per hour only fanning those flames, threatening an area that hasn't had a wildfire in some 25 years. It's still unclear what caused this fire. And from fire to ice, from heavy snow and rain to hurricane-force winds, more than 2,000 flights were canceled or delayed today. From Colorado to Wisconsin, at least a foot of snow is expected. And as we heard, Montana won't be missing out on that action. Well, coming up on tonight's 10 o'clock news, we're going to meet up with a Montana man in the fight of his life who's hoping to help save yours. Plus, even if you are disconnected while high in the sky, a center in Texas is keeping tabs on you. Find out how that works. Then later in sports, meet the catalyst behind Miles City's run to another state football title.
You're watching MTN News with Janelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.